Good morning. This morning I will be preaching about how I healed myself by exposing myself to a lot of art, a lot of performance art, a lot of good art. And I took it on not only as a hobby, but as a healing practice, as a spiritual practice. And I found my spirituality in the concert halls and theaters and museums that I visited. And I'm going to suggest that you do the same. But the question comes, I'm making the claim that it's a spiritual journey for me. And I wanted to explain what I meant by spiritual. So I turned to the writing of the moral psychologist, Jonathan Haidt, and Jonathan Haidt wrote about moral elevation. He wrote, "The power of the positive moral emotions to uplift and transform people has long been known, but not by psychologists. In 1771, Thomas Jefferson's friend, Robert Skipworth, wrote to him asking for advice on what books to buy for his library and for his own education. Jefferson sent back a long list of titles in history and philosophy and natural science. But in addition to those obviously educational works, Jefferson advised the inclusion of some works of fiction. Jefferson justified this advice by pointing to the beneficial emotional effects of great fiction." Jefferson wrote, "Everything is useful which contributes to fix us in the principles and practices of virtue. When any act of charity or gratitude, for instance, is presented either to our sight or our imagination, we are deeply impressed with its beauty and feel a strong desire in ourselves of doing charitable and graceful acts also. On the contrary, when we see or read of any atrocious deed, we are disgusted with its deformity and we conceive an abhorrence of vice. Now, every emotion of this kind is an exercise of our virtuous dispositions, and dispositions of the mind, like limbs of the body, require exercise. They acquire strength by exercise." Jefferson goes on to say that the physical feelings and motivational effects caused by a good novel are as powerful as those caused by real episodes. I ask whether the fidelity of Nelson and the generosity of Blandford in Marmontel do not dilate the reader's breast and elevate his sentiments as much as a similar incident which real history can furnish. Does he not, in fact, feel himself a better man while reading them and privately covenant to copy their fair example? Jefferson identified over 200 years ago the major features of an emotion that we call elevation. Elevation is elicited by acts of virtue or moral beauty. It causes warm, open feelings, dilation, in the chest, and it motivates people to behave more virtuously, to covenant, to copy the fair example. Elevation, therefore, seems to fit easily into a modern appraisal of theories of emotion. Yet elevation and the somewhat related positive moral emotions, like awe, gratitude, and admiration, have received almost no attention from emotion researchers. But any attention to such emotions is crucial for a full understanding of our human morality. Thus reads Jonathan Haidt. Oh, like Alice chasing a rabbit down the rabbit hole. Someone I knew, someone close to me, fell down a deep hole, and I followed because I needed to control that problem. They were falling down a hole. I had to chase down two, fix things. There was fear, there was family strife and anger and fear and recrimination. Did I mention fear? I was plenty afraid. Now, I don't want to confess somebody else's trouble. I'm pretty good about being self-revealing and confessing my mistakes. But if I tell the story wrong, then I'd be confessing other people's mistakes. And I won't do that, but just what you need to know is that somebody close to me fell down a hole. And I went down a deep hole of my own. Something had to change. I was hurting. I was afraid. I was intimidated. I was resentful. Something had to change. I made a decision, a commitment, a turning to heal my own turmoil. But how? So I found a support group, and I started attending it 3 times a week. Still attending it 3 times a week. And I took, by taking care, I took some time off. I worked for Boeing, and there have been a lot of jokes about Boeing recently. But Boeing treated me good. And so I went to my boss and I said, I'm in overwhelm. I can't work 40 hours a week and take care of myself. And he said, you should apply for Family Medical Leave Act. I said, well, why? He said, well, talk to a doctor, figure out why. So I went to a doctor and I said, well, I think I'm stressed. He said, well, tell me. And I started telling him about the relative and the hole that they fell down and the support groups. He said, I think you're stressed enough that we could qualify you for family medical leave. And so I knocked my hours down to 30 hours a week. And I went and talked to my minister, Reverend Katie McQuaig Lucas, over at Bay Area U. And I cut back on my workload so I could take better care of myself. And that seemed to help, the support groups, and went and joined the support groups, and I lost 15 pounds. And I promised myself I would start enjoying more art, more creative arts. Not particularly creating arts. I wasn't picking up a paintbrush or sculptor's tools. I just was going to go and expose myself to art. Just attending, appreciating art, soaking it in, observing it, appreciating it, and letting my heart be touched and elevated by it. And this was my spirituality, starting about a year ago. And what is my spirituality? For me, spirituality are the things that allow me to let go of myself, to forget for a little while about myself and lose myself in something larger and more beautiful and more powerful. That is my experience of spirituality. That time where a section of my mind that's full of chatter about myself and my own problems and my own resentments and my own fear, did I mention the fear, is quiet for a while and I lose myself in something larger. For me, that is spirituality. And you may find somewhat the same. So the art that I appreciated. I went to the Museum of Fine Arts at Houston. I'd gone when my daughters were in high school along with their friends, but friends changed and my wife wasn't into looking at a lot of pictures and I hadn't been back since COVID. So I went down there and I bought a membership plus one, free for a whole year, plus I can take a guest. Taking a guest was really important. Somehow, knowing that I could say to almost any friend, hey, come on down with me to the museum and we'll look at the art together. It touched my heart and it silenced my chatter mind better when I took a friend along. I went a few weeks ago with my daughter Rebecca, ran into a couple of people from my church, my Bay Area UU church. Because you meet Unitarian Universalists when you go out looking to art. Has anybody else been out to an art event and run into other people from this church? I'm seeing some nodding. And what I got from that was that there is beauty in the world that is beyond my ken, beyond my understanding, and it proceeds without me having to control it. It soothes me and it assures me even on days when I am in turmoil. And so I went down to the museum and I was healed. And I went again and was healed again. And I like live theater. I like dark comedy. There's an outfit called the Catastrophic Theater that does a lot of dark comedy, which I used to go to. My wife doesn't like the dark humor, doesn't like the dark stuff, so I'd quit going, I'd put it aside. I'd had friends that I used to go from Bay Area U that I used to go with, but he's become cautious of crowds and ever since COVID, so I quit going. So I've been to more plays in the last year than I had been in the previous 10 years. With friends, almost all of them friends from my church. And what I got from that was that even in the darkest stories, there is still laughter. It proceeds without me having to control it. It assures me that I can withstand evil and threat even as I am in turmoil. And thus I went to the theater and I was healed. One evening I bought a pair of tickets to a dark theatrical play, and the person that I had offered them to came down with COVID and was unable to go. So I went to a committee meeting at my church and helped the committee. And at the end I said, hey, I've got a spare ticket for a play tonight. And nobody came up and said that they wanted the play. So I started walking around to people saying, I've got this ticket. Do you want to go? And eventually somebody said, oh, all right. And we went and we had a good time, and I was healed and she was healed. All those plays were good, except one which was terrible, and we left before halfway through. We just got up. It was too violent, too dark, no humor, no coherence to the plot. We walked out and just shook our heads and said, that one was a turkey. And there was a man standing outside the theater. He's saying, I saw that you just left the theater. Can I ask you why? And I explained it wasn't funny, it wasn't uplifting, it didn't connect for us. Somehow that particular one wasn't healing us at all. He said, I understand. I said, you were in there too. Why did you leave? He said, well, I'm a critic for a local publication. I said, well, why did you walk out? Same reason as you. Taizé is a community, a Christian community, a Roman Catholic community that does a certain kind of spiritual outreach. And I found a listing of sacred music events online, and it pointed me towards a review that spoke of the place where they were having Taizé was having a concert. And the review says, located on the grounds of the Villa de Mattel complex is the conventional chapel. That means a chapel at a convent. A conventional chapel, undoubtedly the most beautiful structure in the city. We would be remiss if we failed to mention the existence of this special place. The interior is of concrete mosaic, inlaid Tavernella marble, and Venetian mosaics. The stained glass windows are as fantastic as is the statuary. Symbolism is everywhere. The experience is akin to standing inside a jewel box that is bathed in sunlight. So I wrestled up some friends and said, we're going to go hear this concert. The chapel's only open a few times a year to the general public, and this concert is one of them, and I want to see this. And let me tell you, when they said it was the most beautiful spiritual structure in Houston, I tend to agree. I don't know that I've seen all the candidates yet, but this place blew my socks off. It was so beautiful. And then the big lead pipe organ high up playing sacred music, followed by the prayer and the adoration. I have rarely been as spiritually moved as I was in that concert. And what I got from it is that there is beauty in this world that is beyond my ken, and it proceeds without me having to control it. It soothes me, and it assures me even as I am in turmoil. And so I was healed at the Taizé concert down at the conventional chapel. And I went to a Metallica cover band with a crew from people at the UU church. And hey, I'm 69 now. I was 68 when I did that. I'm not the usual guy to go to a Metallica cover band, but I had a friend who liked Metallica. I said, I'll open myself to a form of art that is alien to me, and I cheated a little bit. I took along some foam earplugs because it was like really, really loud, and I don't have all my hearing, and didn't want to lose any more. So I took along earplugs, but we went, and I danced some, and I laughed a lot because it was silly, and Metallica cover band is not to be taken seriously, but it is to be taken spiritually. And what I got from it is that there is beauty in the world that is beyond my ken and well beyond my usual habits, and it proceeds without me having to control it. It soothes me and assures me, even that I am in turmoil, that there is laughter and there is silliness and there is exultation and there is bad dancing, and I was healed.